Titans add an extra practice on Friday. Brian Callahan thinks they needed more time in pads, so they add an extra practice. How did Cam Ward and the offense bounce back? What did we make of the latest O-line, D-line one-on-ones, standout players from practice, and more? This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it.
He doesn't repeat mistakes thus far. He's been pretty consistent in that. As we make a correction and he gets that right and moves forward, and you usually don't see it again. So that's good. That means we're growing and we're getting better.
Brian Callahan talking about his quarterback Cam Ward on Friday morning, not repeating mistakes. In reference mostly there, that question was about all the interceptions over the middle to the linebackers. Have they all been the same play? Have they all been sort of different little things? And Callahan saying, no, he doesn't repeat the same mistake. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville. In partnership with 440 Sports, I'm Justin Graver. With me as always, Justin Melo. Justin, how you doing on this fine Friday afternoon?
Doing well. Yeah, the Titans decide to add a practice on Friday that was not initially on their schedule, so we decide to add a podcast that wasn't initially on our schedule. That's what you call pivoting. We're growing and learning at training camp as well, not just the players. They talked to Brian Callahan about this quote-unquote unplanned practice. It was announced a couple of days ago. Titans had a pretty big gap in their practice schedule. Brian Callahan decides to fill that gap by adding another padded session to Friday. So I don't think it's a coincidence, though, that after a couple of disappointing practices, specifically by the offense, on what I believe was Tuesday and Wednesday, Cam Ward calling them mid, which went viral after one of those practices. Don't think it's a coincidence that Brian Callahan adds this practice on Friday. Felt like they needed it. He had a good reason, good excuse, if you will, so that they've got joint practices coming up. He just wants to make sure they're sort of ready for all that's ahead. So made a lot of sense, I think, to add this practice, considering how they've been performing, paired with the gap in the schedule.
Right, and the Titans will now practice 3 days in a row, today, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, before they have, I think, Monday off, and then another week begins. But Brian Callahan also said that players will be managed over these 3 days, 3 intense days in pads. Like, not everyone's going to be out there every day. When it comes to veterans who have proven who they are in the league, some of them might get a little more rest. And we'll talk about guys who were not at practice today in a little bit. But I do want to start, obviously, with Cam Ward and the offense and whether or not they had the bounce back day that people sort of hoped for. Before we get too far into it, though, Justin, we need to talk about Terry McLaurin, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because you and I, despite our funny, jokey back and forth on Twitter that some of our listeners may have seen, you and I are actually in agreement on this, so I'm going to put 30 seconds on the clock. You got 30 seconds to tell Titans fans why Terry McLaurin doesn't really make sense. Ready and go.
Just doesn't fit the rebuilding timeline Tennessee is on. I think Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi have made it clear this is a draft and develop approach that they're taking. They want to stack draft capital, not get rid of it. So Terry McLaurin towards 30 in September. Calvin Ridley's about the same age. Don't think it makes sense to have to replace both your receivers at the same time.
Wow, you did that in 20 seconds. Nice job. And I'll just echo most of that for Micah Parsons. Obviously, the age thing isn't a big factor, but all the talk they've done about draft, develop, and retain, it doesn't make sense for them to go send out, premium capital for these guys, especially when at the end of the day, neither one of these guys are going anywhere. They're both going to sign new deals with their teams, so it's not even worth talking about, in my opinion.
Fully agreed. Look, if they go out and acquire Terry McLaurin or Micah Parsons is definitely not going anywhere, but neither of us are going to be disappointed, right? Like, McLaurin's a great player. It'd be fun to watch him on the offense this year. I just don't think it meshes with their timeline. He turns 30, as I said, in a couple of weeks. Just that's not the place that they feel they're in right now.
Exactly. So you wrapped it up in 20 seconds nicely, but then you added 20 more seconds there and you actually went over the shot clock. Just that's okay. We'll let this one slide. We know I have problems with clock management, so I'll let it go for you. Before we talk about Cam Ward, a reminder to everyone to like this video, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment below. We appreciate all of you guys. Thanks for tuning in. All right, let's talk about Cam Ward and the offense bouncing back. He was better today. By all accounts, he was better today. He played more on time, according to Teron Davenport. Paul Kaharski called it a crisper practice. Easton Freeze called it crisper execution. Lots of crispiness out there, according to the Titans beat. But yeah, he was on time, and they were working a lot of third down stuff, a lot of quick passing, timing stuff, and it sounded like he had a much better day, although there were still a couple of hiccups.
Yeah, I mean, according to everyone, it was a better practice on Friday than it was on Tuesday and Wednesday, right? So as you said, maybe not perfect, but better means you're moving in the right direction. And I think Brian Callahan, considering this session was unplanned originally, will probably feel good about it, right? He'll feel good about adding it, saying, hey, we got our rookie quarterback moving in the right direction. This was a fruitful practice, if you will. Two of his biggest plays of the day, according to The Beat, there was a strike to rookie receiver Shimere DK on what was described as an out route. DK then cut it back inside after catching it, and it led to an explosive play yards after catch. In fact, I believe it was Ben Arthur who said this might have been a touchdown. Or I think it was JT Runke who said this would have been a touchdown, would have outrun the defense.
JT or TJ? There's some questions about what he likes to be called out there in the media. No, it's JT. Go ahead.
On the very next rep, Cam Ward builds on that. He hits Van Jefferson up the left sideline. It was called a quick fade route, if you will. Titans brought a blitz on the play, so more of that aggressiveness that you've seen from Denard Wilson in recent practices. Maybe this one rep shows you growth. They bring a blitz. He doesn't panic, doesn't freak out about it. He hits a quick route to Van Jefferson up the left sideline. Good coverage by Jarvis Brownlee Jr., but an even bigger completion to Van Jefferson on that route. As you said, wasn't perfect, right? Well, he threw another interception. That's, I think, the fourth running practice where he's had a pick. This one to Roger McCreary, a would-be pick six, it was called, that perhaps McCreary would have run it all the way back. I can envision it in my head. It sounds like he undercut Tyler Lockett on a rep where there was maybe some miscommunication between veteran receiver and rookie quarterback. Anytime you get to undercut a route like that, it is often a pick six, right? You're able to return it for a big gain. So second straight practice for Roger McCreary, I believe, with an interception. He had the tipped ball at the Wednesday session on the Cody Barton tip. So good stuff for Roger McCreary. Another pick for Cam Ward. He'll get on track with Tyler Lockett. They've been talking in between reps a lot. I'm sure this is one where that happened again when they weren't on the same page. All in all, though, by all accounts, a better practice for Cam Ward, and that's what we wanted to hear.
Exactly. And on the interception, it sounded like it was one of those quick outs to the flat. Yeah. And I saw one report, forgive me, I can't remember which reporter said it, that the ball was out really, really early, way before Lockett made a break, which you love to see Ward trying out to make sure, try to work on that timing with his receivers and those anticipation throws. But maybe Lockett took it too deep. Maybe somebody, misread the coverage and Ward thought there should be an adjustment and Lockett didn't see it, or who knows what. A miscommunication is a miscommunication. It's way better than reading that Ward misread the coverage and didn't see a linebacker sitting in the hole and threw it right to him. I'll take miscommunication interceptions versus just like bad throws or bad reads by the quarterback. Much more, I think you can take that a lot easier and learn from it because, again, as you said, they're talking between reps and every mistake out here is a chance to learn. I do want to talk really quick about Cam Ward's tipped balls problem. And I don't know if this is a real problem, if this is going to be a real problem or whatever. I didn't love the way he addressed it after Wednesday's practice, and it's not something that I'm like overly concerned about or panicking about or anything like that. I'll just say I'm keeping my eye on this one, and maybe it's Cam Ward learning what arm angles he can get away with in the pocket at this level. He talked a lot about how he likes to throw sidearm. I think he said on Wednesday, I've been throwing sidearm since I was 6 years old. That's how I throw the ball. Somebody asked him, are you worried about tipped balls? And he said something along the lines of, I had tip balls in high school, I had tip balls in college, I had tip balls in practice. I'm going to have some balls batted down at the NFL level. And it's like,
football,
okay.
Shit happens, I think.
He said that too, but the one I'm specifically referring to, it's like, yeah, okay, it's the NFL. You're going to have some passes batted down. That is an objectively true statement. But his attitude about it is like, don't you want to do as much as you can to avoid as many tipped balls as possible? And I know that this is the Cam Ward attitude, is the, shrug it off. Nothing really phases me. I'm cool all the time. And I love that about him. And I'm fine if this is how he wants to approach this. And I'm not panicking yet, but I think it's just something maybe to watch. He does have a bit of a lower release point on the ball. And it's not like, he's a big guy, but he's not 6'5", 6'6", towering presence in the pocket. He's like 6'2", 6'3". So just something to keep my eye on. The tip balls, Ben Arthur said he had a couple more deflected today at the line of scrimmage, and it's like, okay, let's get over this tipped ball issue. And even Brian Callahan before practice said like, I don't know, don't throw a ball that gets tipped. I don't know, what do you want me to say to a tipped ball? It's like, well, throw it over the lineman. That's what I want you to say.
I thought what Brian Callahan said that was the better part of his answer was that a few of them have come on RPOs. And he said, typically speaking, the rush is a lot closer to the quarterback, obviously, right? Because they're making the decision if they're taking the ball carrier or they're taking the quarterback, they're taking the bait or not. So the rush being a lot closer to the quarterback in those scenarios probably has led to a couple of those tip balls. So I'm with you, but interesting to hear that. Not only did Cam Ward shrug it off on Wednesday, yes, he had more tip balls on Friday, but I would say Brian Callahan came pretty close to shrugging it off on Friday as well.
I agree. All right, let's move on really quick. I want to talk about something that was a big talking point after Wednesday's practice, and it was, all over Nashville radio, there was a big talking point about the urgency and the energy in practice. And I think Buck Rising had former Titans punter Brett Kern on talking about how urgency should lead to energy, and everyone's talking about how the energy is not good enough at practice. And so Brian Callahan was asked about the energy at practice and if he thinks that that's one of the problems and maybe one of the reasons. Teron Davenport asked the question, maybe one of the reasons that they added this practice that wasn't originally on the schedule. And here's what Callahan said to that.
No, I don't feel that at all. I think our team's focused, and I don't know what energy looks like for you guys, but I know what I feel and what I see in the practice portion. Guys compete. We're focused. There's not a lot of BS going on, and I think that the style of practice and the way these guys work is pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of extra with it, and I like that about our football team.
I like that too about our football team, but I will say, Justin, to me, the big question this year, aside from the obvious Cam Ward, the big question we all want the answer to this season is Brian Callahan a good head coach? And I'm not trying to make any definitive statements on that answer on August 1st, and that's not the point of me bringing this up. But I do want to say something along the lines of Brian Callahan last year was clearly in over his head. There were many phases of many games where he was out-coached. He failed to make second-half adjustments on a routine basis, and the Titans only won 3 games largely as a result of that. Now, there were also a lot of quarterback issues and a lot of games that they were in position to go win, and the quarterback made it impossible to do that. So it's not all on his shoulders. It's another thing. I'm keeping my eye on this urgency, this energy. The great teams practice every rep like it's their last rep. And Amani Hooker said after practice on Wednesday, we need to have that focus on every single rep, as maximum focus that we can. And I agree with that. But Amani Hooker also talked about how a lot of the changes in the style of leadership from the player standpoint is player driven, not coach driven, the accountability stuff. And now obviously Callahan implemented a whole system to, make the team bond and play for each other and hold people accountable more. But it's just another little thing I'm keeping my eye on. I think as we are in this time of year, it's a hype season time of year, and Titans fans are very excited about what this team can do, and can they turn it around and be the Commanders or the Texans of 2 years ago and go make noise and surprise people. And I just think that, as much as I want to fall into that excitement, there is a big part of me that is temper your expectations. This was a bad football team last year. They might be a bad football team again this year, not just an average or below average, but they might be a bad football team again. And so I'm looking for little signs through training camp that can either confirm or deny my suspicions. And this, I don't think is a huge deal, but the media that are out there have covered hundreds of Titans practices over many, many, many years. And if they say they're not seeing that sense of urgency and that energy that they've seen from the good Titans teams of the past, and Brian Callahan saying, I think the energy's fine, I'm not going to say it's a problem. I'm just saying I'm keeping my eye on it, and it's interesting to me.
Yeah, I'll say this. Following a lot of training camps around the league, I write about a lot of teams. I'll be honest with you, it feels, and this might mean nothing because boring doesn't necessarily mean bad, but I don't feel the excitement coming out of training camp from the beat like maybe I do elsewhere. And I don't think that's certainly not the beat's fault. I follow a lot of Raiders reporters, Seahawks reporters, and I'm getting tweets on my timeline Geno Smith has been money today, 12 for 12, the offensive line competition. Bo Nix just hit Troy Franklin down the left sideline for a 55-yard bomb. I feel like I'm not seeing a lot of that at Titans training camp, right? I think if you were to focus on all 32 camps, it's probably been one of the more boring ones around the league. And that's a little surprising when you have a number 1 overall quarterback, right?
Outside of a couple of things Cam Ward has said that have gone viral, and the one amazing throw from one amazing throw from Saturday's practice sort of went mini viral.
Yes.
But I agree overall,
Those have
and
been
some
few
of
and
this,
far between, right? Yeah.
yeah, and some of this is on the beat, and I don't mean this as a negative towards the Titans beat. I mean it more as a negative to some of the other beats. Like there are a couple that stand out in my brain as always way overhyping the camps that they're covering, and that includes the Colts and the Patriots, where we've seen a lot of probably unwarranted hype coming out of those camps this year. So I think that is some of it, but I agree. Like, I mean, no, you continue your point because I think you were getting to the energy
It just
part of
feels a little under the radar, right? And whether it's good or bad, we'll find out. Like the urgency energy thing you're talking about, number one, Brett Kern probably doesn't know a lot about the 2025 Titans.
No.
But it sounded like I think he was watching practice when that happened. It's certainly like he was sitting on a podium with Buck, or sorry, like a desk with Buck at practice.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting. Like he made a point to say that Mike Vrabel's teams were really good at that. There was a lot of energy. There was a lot of urgency, right? And I just thought that was interesting coming out of his mouth because he didn't full out say it, but I almost felt like he was watching practice and thinking along the lines of, yeah, this feels kind of different. Maybe not in a great way than, compared to my time here. But I'm going to end with this. Again, we're not going to make any drastic takeaways from this topic. It's too early. But if this team is, 0-3, losing in September, losing in October, I promise you one of these guys, maybe a Paul Kuharsky, it sounds like something he would do, is going to say, the energy felt off in August. You know what I mean? And we asked him about it, and he said it wasn't an issue. Well, now they're 0-3 and starting slow. You know what I mean? Or they're not adjusting. Like, they'll come back to bite them if they don't start well.
Yeah, it's just a major TBD if Brian Callahan is the guy and can be the guy. And it sounds like there's a lot of confidence in him right now from his bosses, the Chad Brinkers and the Mike Borgonzis and the Amy Adams Strunks. But we'll see if that lasts, if the team isn't winning games. So that's just something we had to address here. But I do think the energy was a little better on Friday's practice based on all reporting. So we're going to move on and continue talking about it. Calvin Ridley missed practice with a rest day. Callahan addressed the calf issue that he had on Wednesday, confirmed again for the second confirmation that it was just a cramp. And Tavondre Sweat did not practice as well. He's dealing with an abdominal injury. Brian Callahan called him day to day. Nothing to panic about, nothing to worry about. Another minor injury note, Peter Skoronski left practice a little early, went inside with trainers, but came back out to do a media session and told everyone that he just got rolled up on and everything's fine. So small little nicks popping up here and there, but Titans so far avoiding anything catastrophic, and I think that's a good thing, and you just cross your fingers and hope it stays that way.
Yeah, there have been some catastrophic injuries around the league already, so knock on wood. We've seen a lot of guys, Dolphins lost Cater Coho, the cornerback, Browns lost Martin Emerson for the whole year, both of those guys. So Titans are in pretty good health. Going to move on to O-line versus D-line reps today, and I'm going to call it an uneven day for both sides. I'm going to land on uneven because I saw some conflicting reports. There were some who said that the O-line won the day, and then there were others that said it wasn't a very good session for the O-line. I'm going to call it down the middle and say uneven. For example, we had JT from A to Z Sports said Dan Moore did not have a very good day, though the only confirmed rep I could really find that was a bad one was the last one of O-line, D-line drills where Draymond Jones apparently got the better of him on that rep. We need to see Draymond Jones get pressure on quarterbacks this year, so I'm not going to take that as too bad. But again, JT noting that Moore had a couple of bad reps. Probably the most surprising one.
He used the word brutal, not just bad, brutal.
Yeah. Whereas someone else had said it was a good day for the O-line in general. But probably the most surprising one of the day, I would say, was UDFA pass rusher Desmond Evans beating right tackle J.C. Latham. First of all, Desmond Evans is, I've talked about him a little on the show, is a former 5-star recruit to North Carolina who never lived up to the 5-star billing for the Tar Heels. Titans signed him as a UDFA this year. A lot of untapped potential. Something made him a 5-star once upon a time, right? So Titans trying to tap into that. He's battling for what I would call that 5th and final spot at edge rusher with like a Jalen Harrell who hasn't shown a whole lot last year as a rookie or this year in camp. A big win for Desmond Evans to beat your starting right tackle, J.C. Latham. In fact, Parker Kelly, who was there covering the team as well, said that Desmond Evans was a standout at Friday's practice. So that was really interesting to me. A couple other quick news and notes why I call it an uneven day. Arden Key jumped offside twice during these pass rushing drills. I'll say this, the D-line's been getting their butts handed to them throughout most of these in prior days. Not surprised a guy like Arden Key's fired up for these drills, trying to get a win for his team. And he eventually did get one after jumping offside a couple times. He beat Peter Skoronsky on a rep. Someone described it as one of the few reps Skoronsky has lost throughout these one-on-one drills. So you like to see that for both sides. You like to see Arden Key get a win. You like to see Peter Skoronsky consistently doing well outside of this rep. One other notable one that I do want to mention was Kevin Zeitler, quote-unquote, standing up Jeffrey Simmons. We had reports from, I think it was Tuesday's session in pads, the first one, that Zeitler didn't look very good during this drill. And we talked about it on Tuesday's show and said, well, perhaps he's with the veteran guard knocking off the rust, didn't do a lot at OTA's minicamp. Well, we were right. He was just knocking off the rust because he stands up Jeffrey Simmons during a rep on Friday and was consistently called the best performer of the O-line at Friday's 1v1. So nice to see Kevin Zeitler quickly putting those struggles behind him and getting back on track.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth there, Justin. I think we can breeze right along to our back end of the roster, guys, after this quick word from Sinkers Beverages. Sinkers' 40th birthday jamboree is coming up. You guys know when, if you tune into the show regularly. It's Saturday, August 9th, 5:30 p.m. at the Basement East. Get your tickets at the link in the description. Just $10. Comes with 2 free drinks. All proceeds go to benefit the Martha K. O'Brien Center in East Nashville. So come out and have a good time. All right, Justin, some back end notes here, guys, competing for spots on the roster. Let's start with Jalen Duncan, who, by all accounts, is having a great training camp for the third-year tackle who has struggled every chance he's gotten on the field, both to stay on the field with health and to win reps on the field. But apparently, maybe that Bill Callahan magic touch is starting to rub off on him.
Third day in pads for the Titans, third successive good day for Jalen Duncan. Our pal Zach Lyons had tweeted that Bill Callahan vocally praised him during a pass set drill. And then later, what we just talked about, O-line versus D-line one-on-ones, Teron Davenport said he had a bunch of good reps. In fact, even caught the attention of Titans legend, former franchise left tackle Brad Hopkins, who was watching practice and said that Jalen Duncan looked good. I said it on our last recap show that Duncan is starting to gain some momentum as the swing tackle, and by all accounts, Friday was another step in that right direction. Shout out veteran receiver James Prochet, who Paul Kuharski called the wide receiver 7 right now. Easton Freeze said he has been the most consistent receiver through 6 practices during 11-on-11 drill. He made several big plays on Friday. Once again, think we've reached the point where we're giving him the slight upper hand on August 1st. On Xavier Restrepo for that 7th and final spot. Call me crazy, but I don't think this comes down to just James Prochet versus Xavier Restrepo.
Crazy.
Call me crazy. I asked you to do it. I'll say this. You should ding me for I'll say this, but he needs time to find it, ladies and gentlemen. He's off this game.
Make sure I hit the right button. I was going to hit the wrong one, so I'm glad I checked.
There it is. That's the right one. Call me crazy, officially a Meloism, but I think this also comes down to Chimere Dike. Why, Melo? Why do you ask? That's a weird thing to say. Well, if there's a scenario where James Prochet is the better receiver than Xavier Restrepo, but they don't need him to return kicks, I think it's possible they go with the developmental guy and say, hey, Prochet's like a, 5th or 6th year pro. Restrepo gives us more in the long run. Let's go with Restrepo. But if Chimere Dike is struggling as the return guy, and we're going to find this out, I think, during the preseason games, and they get to a point where they say, not only is he been the better receiver than Xavier Restrepo, but I also think we need him to return kicks because our other rookie receiver hasn't looked that good doing it. Maybe that's where you get to the point where you're definitely keeping James Prochet over Xavier Restrepo. But if it just comes down to who's the better performer, yes, that's Prochet right now. But I think there's maybe a scenario there where you say, we don't need him to return kicks, and we think Restrepo gives us more in the long run. This is never as straightforward as we think it is when it comes to roster battles. Lots of moving pieces. But for now, all indications are that Prochet has been the better wide receiver 7.
Yeah, I am with you. And Easton Freeze didn't just say he was the most productive through 6 practices. He wrote a whole ass article earlier this week about why James Prochet is taking Xavier Restrepo's roster spot. And I called you crazy in jest there, but also a little like, I do think it is James Prochet versus Xavier Restrepo. And I agree Chimere Dike's abilities to potentially make Prochet a redundant piece in the special
Right.
teams game could impact that, but ultimately it's going to be about between the two of them, because I think Prochet could also be a gunner. Like, he's not just going to be a returner. He can be a special teamer on the other side of the ball. And can Restrepo? And that's the question. Can Restrepo add value? Do the Titans even keep 7? And if they do keep 7, is it, I mean, if they're keeping 7, that 7th spot is between Prochet and Restrepo.
Yeah.
There's no Jaquan Jackson's not in the mix. TJ Sheffield's not in the mix. Like, nobody else is in the mix. Mason Kinsey, the 2 guys they just signed in the last week and a half or so, those guys aren't, I mean, let's be real, they're not really in the mix either. So it's going to be Restrepo or Prochet if that final spot. And while we're talking about Restrepo, Justin, I'm sorry, I just need to address this really quick. If you follow me on X/Twitter, you may have seen me and Tyler Rowland going back and forth a little bit on X there about the Restrepo takes. And look, I have the utmost respect for Tyler. I've said this on the show before. I think he works extremely hard, produces content every single day. It's not easy. Justin and I have tried to do that a few times, and we get too busy with other stuff that we can't even produce content on a daily basis. So,
although we pretty much have been lately.
Yeah, we're pretty close. But even so, like, a ton of respect for Tyler. I just, I had to call out the take. He called Xavier Restrepo a lock to make the roster 2 weeks ago. And then Friday morning, he posts a video talking about how Xavier Restrepo is at risk of not making the team. And I'm not coming at Tyler for his prediction. You and I predicted 2 weeks ago that Xavier Restrepo would make the team as well. I just wanted to call out the contradiction. If you're going to call someone a lock 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks later, stand on it. He's a lock. He's struggling right now, but he has time to make up ground. He can still do, or say, I was wrong to call him a lock. You got to go one of the 2 ways. You can't just say, that was a good take at the time, and this is also a good take today. It's the contradictory nature of it that I had to call out, and I didn't mean to address it on the podcast, but we're talking about Restrepo. There's people coming at me in my mentions on Twitter for starting shit, which I agree. I did start some shit, maybe for no reason, but it's all in good fun, and I just want you guys to know I do respect Tyler a lot, and I just wanted to address it. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Justin, with the final quick hitter notes.
Yeah, I'll just say he's not a lock because he's in competition, obviously, with James Prochet, as we just said. So we'll see what that comes down to. I don't have on Restrepo because we didn't talk about it a lot. Again, another good practice on Friday for him. Just to note, connect again, working with the 2s and 3s, lots of connections with Brandon Allen and Tim Boyle at Friday session. Consistently complimented for finding space, doing what he does, which is getting open and catching the football. So there is that note that I'll add to the notes. The last one I was going to mention was veteran cornerback Amani Oruwariye had the second and final interception of Friday's practice, intercepted Tim Boyle. I would say Oruwariye, a very similar situation where if they keep that, I think, 6th corner, I think it probably comes down to him and Gabe Jeudy-Lally. There are some others. I'm really intrigued by Jamani Harris, UDFA, that they've got in there, but I do think it's probably either Jeudy-Lally or Oruwariye. Jeudy-Lally had an interception the other day. Oruwariye has one today on Friday. Fun to see, again, kind of similar to what's going on at receiver. Maybe not as exciting because it's not Restrepo, but fun to see those back-end corners fighting for that final spot.
Yes, sir. All right, Justin. I think we covered Friday's practice thoroughly here. Nothing else that we need to add. Thanks to everyone again for tuning in. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop your thoughts in a comment below. Did I come too hard at Tyler on Twitter today? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll tell you you're wrong. Or you might be right. I don't know. I'm not that. I don't have that much passion for it. But anyway, Justin, we're going to be back on Monday because, as we said at the top of the show, the Titans practicing again Saturday, practicing again Sunday. So we'll be back Monday as early as you and I can get to it. We will be recording a recap of the weekend to drop for you guys. And then joint practices are coming up right around the corner. So I think it might be fun, Justin, to do a joint practice preview. I don't know if we'll have time to do it before the joint practice actually happens, but potential to do something like that. So we'll see where we go. And then, you know what? We are a week away from tomorrow from the first Titans preseason game. Yeah. And I'm super excited for that. Little announcement for you guys. We're going to live stream the recap of that game right here on the MCA YouTube channel. And by we, I mean you, because I won't be here.
Yeah, Graver's got a previous obligation, a family-related obligation, so he'll miss the first preseason game. I do think we're going to do something, maybe a film breakdown of Cam Ward's first game. That's going to come to you as well. That will involve Graver, of course, maybe Monday or so, just a day or two after the training camp game. But I will be here live streaming right after the game, so it'll be a regular episode of MCA without Graver. We're going to live stream it. It goes up on the YouTube immediately when you end that live stream. So you're still going to want to check it out because I will be watching the game and I won't be alone. I hate the idea of doing a solo show. I think it's weird. I like the back and forth. I like talking to someone instead of just, yelling at the camera kind of thing. So I'm going to bring on Ryan Watson, who, if you were a true Broadway sports supporter, lover, you might remember Ryan. He hosted a podcast with Graver, the Flex, the fantasy football podcast, early Broadway days with Zach Lyons, and I believe Rob Greenlaw was on that one as well. And he also had his own podcast called Coach's Corner. Ryan Watson coached offensive linemen at a high level, so he's not just a Joe Blow that I'm bringing on. He was pivotal to launching Broadway sports media behind the scenes, in front of the camera for a bit as well. And he actually coached offensive linemen at the college level. So I can't wait to bring him on, talk a little Jackson Slater and what we see from the Titans O-line in that first game. But he'll be here for all of that show. So really excited to just reconnect with Ryan Watson. I missed the heck out of him.
Yeah, me too. And I'll be reconnecting with him before the stream to make sure that he's all set up and ready to run it live. So there you go. All right, everyone. We talked for too long in the outro here. That's the end of the show. We'll be back on Monday. Until then, y'all stay safe out there and tighten up.
Tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.